sorry, mutilated.
Eddie Murphy is back again to rave on our screens after a 3-decade hiatus as Detroit's favorite cop who was framed for his knack of mass vandalism, making up crazy stories to shit-talk his way out of dangerous situations, and, of course, never going by the rules. Axel Foley is just the perfect hero for a Netflix movie, a renegade cop who simply refuses to go by the book, causing massive collateral damage in his wake, all in the name of saving Los Angeles from its systemic corruption. This might explain why Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F feels more solid and confident than most straight-to-streaming sequels. This film has beautifully orchestrated a story about the enduring power of a classic character in today's Hollywood, showing that a strong sense of familiarity can make people overlook almost anything. Love it or hate it, the newest escapades of Axel Foley stays true to his own style. It's been 40 years since the first Beverly Hills Cop hit theaters, and 30 years since John Landis' Beverly Hills Cop 3 crashed at the box office so badly. It literally put the $1 million franchise on hold. Yet, watching Axel Foley drive around Detroit with Glenn Frey's "The Heat Is On" playing in the background makes it feel like no time has passed. While it doesn't live up to its first predecessor, Beverly Hills Cop 4 manages to retain the essence of the 80s to some extent, especially from a cinematic point of view. So, without wasting another moment, let's find out where the latest adventures of Axel Foley takes us. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Easy. This might come as a surprise.
The beginning of the film sees Axel Foley make his usual detour to Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F kicks off on a typical snowy morning in Detroit with police detective Axel Foley driving to work with full-on energy. Even though he's not as young and agile as he used to be, his undeterred charm still makes him a favorite among his colleagues and the locals. Foley is seen to be on his way to the Little Caesars Arena to catch a Detroit Red Wings hockey game with a fellow cop. His colleague is a younger man who is excited to spend time with the legendary detective outside of work. However, his excitement soon mixes up with concern after he realizes Foley is just actually there to follow up on a tip. Suddenly, a group of robbers storm the stadium, aiming to steal the players' valuables from the locker room. The opening sequence, where Axel simply goes off the book to catch a gang of thieves trying to rob the Red Wings' locker room during the hockey game, is classic Beverly Hills Cop. It's packed with witty one-liners, lightly updated humor, and is a perfect start to showcase Murphy's charisma as the Detroit Police Department's best asset. Anyways, Foley and his colleague then jump into action to stop them, leading to a long, chaotic chase across Detroit. That too, on a snowplow, which really was the cherry on top. It, of course, causes significant damage to both public and private property, but as always, in the end, the robbers are caught and arrested. Axel might be at the age where younger cops say, "You're the reason I joined the force," but he has still got the same charm and swagger that makes him the legend he is. Now, although Foley gets all the credit and applause for taking down the gang and protecting the city's reputation, the same can't be said for his old friend and boss, Police Chief Friedman, who ends up getting fired due to the massive financial damage caused during the chase. Jeffrey is more than willing to take the fall for Axel's latest stunt, as he would rather hang out with his sociopathic grandson than deal with any more job-related headaches at his age. But this is not something Axel can relate to, as he only feels relaxed while risking his life busting crime rings. Soon we learn the drawbacks of his obsession with his job. Despite his knack for thinking on his feet, Axel is so unsure of how to function outside of work that he hasn't spoken to his own daughter much in the past couple of decades. While he doesn't want Jeffrey to retire, Foley has bigger concerns when he gets a call that night from his old friend in Beverly Hills, Billy Rosewood. For those who are not well versed with the franchise, during Foley's earlier detective work in Beverly Hills, Billy was a young cop who went on to become a close friend and later joined the Detroit Cop in many cases. Billy is Foley's only connection to his estranged daughter, Jane, who is now a criminal defense attorney in Beverly Hills and has changed her last name to Saunders. Jane's job leads her to defend the kind of people her estranged father has spent his entire life putting behind bars. After after Billy tells Foley that Jane has recently taken on a case to defend a man named Enriquez who has been accused of murdering a police officer, it becomes clear that despite all their differences, Jane has one thing in common with Axel, and that is risking her life for her job. This is painfully proven when a group of masked men dangle her car off a parking garage because someone powerful doesn't want Jane to pursue this case and chose to send a warning that would make her stop. Looks like she is onto something with her latest case, because her theory of a Latino kid being framed for killing a corrupt cop has clearly hit a nerve with the cartels. If only Jane knew a detective with a knack for flying out to a specific part of Los Angeles whenever something seemed off. Well, we all know that Jane would never make that call herself. When Axel hears his daughter is in danger, and with Billy insisting, he decides to fly to Beverly Hills to start his own investigation. Things get more complicated when Billy suddenly goes missing while being on a mission. But Axel's biggest challenge is the emotional distance that has grown between him and Jane over his absence in the past few years.
SD card is missing. This must be what Rosewood was after.
Father and daughter team up to track down Billy Rosewood. So, Axel F avoids leaning too heavily on Axel's fish-out-of-water status from the original. After all, he's no stranger to Beverly Hills now. But they find a smart way to update the familiar formula without losing its essence. While still being cool for his age, Axel is a bit out of sync with today's world, as he realizes his old fast-talking tricks do not work as well in a city that has evolved faster than he has. Back in the day, Axel could charm his way through Beverly Hills, but now it's tougher for him to navigate a future shaped by his own legacy. When Axel Foley comes back to Beverly Hills, he notices a lot of 21st century changes amongst the people, which mostly ranges from more openness about gender identity to the omnipresence of social media, and even the trend of over-coddling pets. But Axel takes it all in with a warm smile, because he is not the type to judge or resist modern developments of the world. His first stop in the Bev is Billy Rosewood's office, where he now works as a private detective after leaving the Beverly Hills PD. Here, Axel finds two gangsters ransacking through Billy's office, clearly searching for something important. He, of course, shit-talks his way into this situation again and quickly locate an address in Billy's planner. But things escalate when a third thug shows up, forcing Axel to run for his life. Following this, a classic chase scene ensues, which will inevitably remind you of the good old days. In the chaos, he gets caught by the police and ends up face-to-face with John Taggart, an old colleague from his police days, who is now the chief of the BHPD. Axel then learns that Billy has been working on a case that has caused quite a lot of friction with the police department, after an undercover cop named Copeland was killed while investigating a drug cartel, and now Sam Enriquez is facing charges for the crime. Enriquez was in the car with Copeland when the incident occurred, and was found holding the gun that killed the officer. Billy, while working as a private investigator, discovered the details of the case and reached out to Jane's law firm. This is when Jane decided to represent Enriquez, who maintained his innocence throughout. She even defended him in court, arguing that a police officer might be involved with a drug cartel and is framing Sam for it. Soon, Jane comes in to bail out her father in exchange for him fessing up everything he knew about Rosewood. Jane tells Axel that it was after this trial that she was threatened by masked goons, which strengthened Billy's belief in Enriquez's innocence. But Taggart and the other officers felt Billy was making things more complicated, as chasing conspiracies was his trademark. Detective Bobby Abbott, who had a romantic history with Jane, was among those who were skeptical of Billy's wild theories. In Axel F, they don't spell out the implications too clearly by staying true to the unpredictable vibe. It's amusing to see Axel navigate trouble now that most of the cops he encounters are black women who see right through his antics, and a country club valet who would rather switch his mannerisms to keep his job than helping Axel out. After Jane and Axel decide to team up to uncover the fiasco around them, they go into the local impound lot, where Axel finds himself outsmarted by a savvy wannabe actor behind the desk. The movie shines brightest when Jane reluctantly joins Axel in posing as a producer of a Liam Neeson flick, which is quite a humorous moment on how Axel passed down his tricks to his daughter without picking up much from her in return. Meanwhile, Detective Bobby, who initially believed that Copeland was a respected officer whose reputation was being unfairly tarnished even after his death, had a change of perspective when he witnessed the cartel's attempt to harm Foley and Jane. After that incident, Bobby decided to assist them, even if he had to face a temporary suspension from his police job as a consequence. This only fueled his commitment to the case, driving him to devote even more time uncovering the truth. Now, it turns out Billy had found crucial evidence that had enough hints to make it clear that Copeland's death was not as straightforward as it looked. He managed to obtain video footage from inside the officer's car, which had recorded the fatal shooting that led to his death. This evidence was stored on an SD card, which was inside a hidden camera in Copeland's car. The villains behind Copeland's murder and the drug syndicate were fully aware of this footage and desperately wanted to steal this SD card to protect their secrets from being exposed. And that is why they kidnapped Billy and held him captive, using all forms of torture to force him to reveal where he had hidden the video footage. They also saw Billy as a potential threat to their operations and possibly intended to eliminate him once they recovered the SD card. But Billy had cleverly hidden the SD card inside a specially modified knife back at his office and only discloses its location after Foley manages to rescue him from the kidnappers. From that moment on, Foley gains another seasoned detective who helps him solve the case.
Jane Saunders. I'm a lawyer. A friend of mine said you might have been set up.
Is Sam Enriquez really innocent? So, in the film, Jane Saunders' character shines brightest in her unwavering defense of Sam Enriquez, whom she staunchly believes to be innocent despite the corrupted system working against him. Eventually, it is hinted by other characters and later on by Jane herself that her career choice on defending those caught by the police is in direct defiance of her father, who has spent his whole life as a detective. While this rebellion may have initially influenced her career path, Jane was fully dedicated to her work, so even after facing serious threats along the way, she remained resolute, eventually winning over her father and her former lover to support Enriquez's case. And yes, Sam Enriquez was innocent, with his only link to crime being his uncle, Chalino, who was involved in the drug cartel. Chalino had persuaded Sam to assist in a drug delivery, essentially acting as a drug mule, and Sam reluctantly agreed. During one of these deliveries, Copeland went undercover and posed as a gang member, accompanying Sam. Now, while being on a mission, Copeland noticed a suspicious car tailing them and attempted to shake off their pursuers. However, before he could evade them, the car approached and fatally shot Copeland, causing their vehicle to crash. Sam Enriquez was also injured in the accident and blacked out in the process, but after he regained his consciousness, he found Copeland's lifeless body next to him with a gun on his hand, which was a weapon Sam did not recognize and wasn't even sure who had placed it there. That is why Sam Enriquez kept insisting he was being set up for the murder, which later proved on to be true. As you know, Axel Foley first met Captain Cade Grant in Chief John Taggart's office, where he learned Grant headed the city's narcotics task force, which spanned through multiple departments. It did not take Axel more than a minute to figure out that Grant was a dirty cop, as the Gucci shoes and the Rolex watch were an easy giveaway. Plus, Grant was leading the official inquiry into Copeland's death, pushing hard to pin the murder on Enriquez. But behind the scenes, Grant was also deeply tied to Chalino's drug cartel, benefiting financially and living lavishly off the proceeds. Copeland, as it turned out, was part of Grant's operation, aware of the narcotics department's corrupt dealings with the same criminals they were supposed to fight. But apparently, Copeland and Grant were having some issues they could not sort out. This motivated Copeland to reveal all the secrets to Billy Rosewood, and that is why Grant was forced to hire goons to murder Copeland. But he also needed to make sure that someone took the fall for this murder, so he chose Sam Enriquez as his pawn to take on all the blame.
Hey, look, we both messed this thing up, all right? Let's just call it even.
How does the film end for Axel and Jane? Even though Grant's scheme had initially succeeded, and he managed to convince the Beverly Hills Police Department that their respected colleague had fallen victim to a drug gang member, it was Billy's constant meddling in the investigation that caused many complications. When he involved Jane in the case, the threat of Grant getting caught further escalated, prompting him to devise a rather elaborate plan to have the young woman kidnapped. He wanted to kill Jane and make it seem like a fatal road accident took took her life, and by doing this, it would again divert any suspicion away from him. However, Axel Foley and Bobby Abbott arrived at the cartel's joint base of operations, alongside Billy and Taggart just in time. They go on to team up again like old times, when they were once partners in the law enforcement in their prime. In the end, they managed to take down Grant and his cartel cohorts, while ensuring Jane's safety and rescuing her from any danger. Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Detective Abbott really shined here as a helpless desk-bound everyman with unexpected badass skills. He becomes Axel's reliable counterpart, balancing the Detroit cop's reckless style with his own competence, but still comes off to be very capable of killing off an entire drug cartel on his lunch break. However, Gordon-Levitt's portrayal struggles to define Abbott beyond this dynamic. Sure, the film briefly teases Abbott's past relationship with Axel's daughter, but this subplot fades as the movie's action intensifies. Despite a few engaging scenes, like a thrilling helicopter chase and a lackluster final shootout, the film overall lacks the comedic punch needed to truly captivate its audience, especially from Detective Abbott's side. Coming to Axel Foley and Jane Saunders' strained relationship, which takes up a huge chunk of the film, as father and daughter, they have spent years apart, each blaming the other for their lack of communication. They have barely seen each other in the past few years and resent one another for it. While Foley insists Jane deliberately kept her life hidden from him, Jane kept arguing her father never made the effort to stay involved in her life. But by the end of Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F, Foley and Jane finally mend their strained relationship. When Foley courageously takes a bullet meant for Jane during the final showdown with Grant, it becomes a pivotal moment as Jane sees it firsthand that her father truly cares about her, proving all her prejudices to be wrong. In turn, Axel also realizes his own shortcomings as a parent and apologizes for not making more effort to connect with Jane over the years. This profound experience also rekindles the romance between Jane and Bobby, bringing them closer together once again. The film then ends on a classic Beverly Hills Cop style as Axel Foley resumes his stupid shenanigans by sneaking out of the hospital to meet up with his old buddies, Taggart and Billy. Ironically, they were tasked by Jane to keep an eye on Axel, but instead, the trio drove up to a restaurant to get some fancy dinner, which they all agreed should be kept as a secret from Jane. Overall, in Axel, nostalgia never feels forced. The movie shines brightest when it takes the familiar characters and places them in new situations. Bronson Pinchot's Surge, known for stealing scenes that add very little to the main plot, brings his unique spark once again, especially when paired with Nassim Pedrad's modern real estate agent vibe. Meanwhile, Kevin Bacon beautifully tackles the role of a typical bad guy in the form of a corrupt cop running the city's narcotics task force, adding a bit of fun to his blatant duplicity. The film cleverly uses these familiar tropes in ways that feel fresh for the franchise. The sense of familiarity that keeps Taggart from recognizing Captain Grant as the villain is the same feeling that leads Jane to give her flawed father another chance. It is a timeless Hollywood theme where people gravitate towards the familiar, even when it's imperfect or predictable. And, you know, sometimes it pays off. You might rediscover what made you love something in the first place, and that is surely something to celebrate. The new Beverly Hills Cop could be the best outcome you could reasonably hope for from a sequel that follows a long-established franchise, especially when the fourth installment tries to balance nostalgia with new ideas. However, despite the effort, Axel F feels a bit defeated due to the weight of its new elements. I mean, no one expected Netflix to recreate the magic of the original, but the movie leans too heavily on what made the first one great, highlighting just how rare lightning in a bottle can be.
The rate is $940 a night plus tax.
I love Beverly Hills.
Will there be a Beverly Hills Cop 5? Before Beverly Hills Cop Axel F was even released, the super producer Jerry Bruckheimer teased us all about the potential for a fifth Beverly Hills Cop film. Both Bruckheimer and Eddie Murphy have claimed that the chances for another sequel is bright, and especially if everything comes together for the newly released film. They even have a few stories in mind, so maybe this time we won't be waiting for another 30 years for a new sequel. While both Murphy and Bruckheimer have shown an interest in in a 5th installment, the project isn't really officially confirmed yet. It's probably because of the atrocious amount of money that Netflix has invested to make Axel F. So there's a possibility that they do not make an astounding amount of profit or even see a good level of success. And by that, the 5th sequel would not be able to receive a green light. But again, unlike its predecessors, Beverly Hills Cop 4 is not dependent on box office numbers. They rely more on long-term views. Netflix usually keeps a tight lid on their streaming numbers, so it's hard to pinpoint the exact viewer count that Beverly Hills Cop Axel F needs to hit in order to turn a profit. However, given the nostalgia factor of this beloved franchise and the star power of Eddie Murphy, the movie is expected to attract a substantial audience. I mean, Murphy's presence alone could propel the 4th installment to the top of Netflix's charts for quite some time. So far, one of the major highlights of Netflix's 4th film in the franchise, which is the Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, has been its return to familiar faces reprising their iconic roles. But should there be a Beverly Hills Cop 5, it's uncertain whether this trend will persist. The next installment might choose to broaden its scope, possibly focusing less on legacy characters and exploring newer narratives by introducing fresh faces to revitalize the series. This approach could go on to cater to both longtime fans and a new generation of viewers. Even then, it's pretty much guaranteed that Eddie Murphy will be back as the sharp Detroit cop, Axel Foley. Plus, there's a good chance that Taylor Page will return as Axel's estranged daughter, Jane. This new twist of a family dynamic in a buddy cop film truly sets the franchise to explore an exciting angle while exploring new possibilities. While it is hard to say if we will see Paul Reiser's Jeffrey Friedman and Judge Reinhold's Lieutenant Billy Rosewood again, there is a chance that Bronson Pinchot's comic relief character, Serge, might make a cameo. Detective Bobby Abbott will probably stick around too, given that he is Axel's newest partner, and their chemistry together was not all that bad. Marvelous verdict. Overall, the rekindled relationship between Axel and Jane and Bobby could really lead to some really interesting storylines, as Axel's trips to Beverly Hills can now be driven by the fact that his daughter lives there, and perhaps, amidst all the ups and downs, he will be on the brink of stumbling into his next, maybe even his last, big case. I would not mind seeing one last hurrah from Axel Foley. What about you guys? Have you watched the film yet? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.